A few months ago, I made this video, which was the result of growing feelings I've been having about myself. In that video, I talked about how I have always felt very unintelligent and I cared more about becoming prettier than exploring ideas or learning new things. I feel as though I've always had a really hard time retaining information. I'm 26 and I can't do basic maths. I don't know my multiplication tables. I don't know how to calculate percentages. I still don't really know what fractions are. I don't have a maths GCSE. I never got one. I didn't pass it in school and I didn't attend my functional skills classes in college, which are supposed to kind of supplement if you don't pass your GCSEs. And I didn't do those, so I performed pretty badly in school while I had an older sibling that was just effortlessly smart. My parents never gave me crap about bad results or anything, but either way, I came away from school feeling just incredibly lacking in mental ability and knowledge, general knowledge. I felt very aware and conscious of like a lack of mental ability. That's how it felt. I really did wonder many times if there was something else wrong with me, because I couldn't remember things. I just couldn't retain information that was given to me, and I couldn't engage with information. And as an adult, I continued to feel that way, and it just seemed like everyone else around me didn't have this problem. Like, they just seemed to know things. And I especially noticed this growing up with my boyfriends. They always seemed to know things that I didn't, and I got the impression that once they had read something or been told something, it kind of just stayed there. For example, I was talking to my boyfriend recently. I just watched a video on the French Revolution and I had mentioned this guy, and he immediately was like, oh yeah, that person, and was able to like recall his contributions to the event and to that period of history. And I had never heard this name before, even though they seem to be a very central character in like the biggest revolt in human history. Maybe I learned about it in school and it just left my brain, and maybe he learned about it in school and it stayed there. If they were curious about something they didn't know about, they would just Google it in that moment. And this was a behavior I could never participate in, because it's like my brain resisted knowledge and new information. If I want to know something, if I want to approach a piece of information, I have to prepare myself. I have to very consciously engage my mind. I couldn't just casually Google something and read about it and have it be effective at all. So I kind of developed this aversion to curiosity and looking for answers. I had this impression that other people could just be exposed to a piece of information once or twice, and it just locked in for them. And they could rely on recalling that information. They could breeze past the information. They could be in the general presence of the information and just soak it up, literally like a sponge. And I would compare myself to something more like a nice, smooth glass paperweight. Pleasant and ornamental, but completely non-porous. It wasn't just the fact that I didn't know a lot of things, it was about me not being able to take in and engage with knowledge. And like, I could read and read about things, and within the next day, within the next week, I could not return to you anything that I had been reading about. And this just feels like the experience I've always had. And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's how it's felt. That's really how it's felt. I've really struggled to learn new things. So I hope that explains a bit more effectively how I've come to feel the way that I do. And I'm not defending it. I'm not that cruel to myself. I don't look at myself in the mirror and say, "You're stupid." Or at least I don't now. And that's why I wanted to make this video and start talking about this. If you watch my other video, you'll remember how I also talked about how relevant my poor body image was to my judgment, and how my feelings about being a woman and being visually and sexually appealing took far greater priority than expanding my mind and developing my character. Being pretty took far greater importance than anything. To illustrate it more practically, I would spend hours every day looking at girls online and trying to figure out how to look like them. What did I need to do? I'd be researching hair and makeup and how it redefined your features. I'd be looking up workouts to target specific parts of my body, cosmetic procedures and how they work and how much they cost. And I don't think there's anything wrong, by the way, with investing in your appearance. It's still something that I do, and it's still something that I enjoy. I love developing my aesthetics and my style. I still devote my time to that, but the issue was that it was virtually all that occupied my mind, and I developed body dysmorphia, and I got depressed, and I neglected my spirit. And it's taken me a really long time to really register the consequences of all of that. And I can't emphasize with enough justice how much effort it's taken to find acceptance with my appearance, but more than that, take away some of that stock that I had been putting into my appearance for so many years, and realizing that it's not as valuable as I thought it was. And this very well may not be your experience as a woman. I do feel like there are women who were much more quickly wise to all of this, that their outward appearance doesn't hold all of the value that they offer. And maybe this honestly sounds quite pathetic, because it was. I felt pathetic, and I was incredibly misguided, and I had to arduously restore my self-esteem. So moving into the next part of this video, I want to share with you some of the things I've been doing to try to open my mind and learn new things. I want a better sense of general knowledge. I don't want to feel so ignorant, and I want to understand things that are happening in the world. I've been making changes towards a daily life that has more casual access to knowledge. I'm setting up conditions for an environment of learning and curiosity without being intimidated by it. And this is what this looks like for me. So I knew the first place I wanted to start was my social media accounts, because I use them every day. Instagram especially, I scroll on Instagram every day, and it's important that the content on there is enriching and positive for me. I just Googled educational Instagram accounts, and I have to admit, some of the results were a bit strange. They were like articles of like top 10 educational Instagram accounts, and a lot of them led to like pages with like maybe millions, like hundreds of thousands of followers, and then like 1,000 likes on the post, which made me feel a bit dubious. And I actually didn't really find anything useful from the first few Google searches. But what I did end up doing is maybe finding 1 or 2 accounts, and then when you follow an account on Instagram, it will drop down with similar recommended accounts. And I just went through there. I just follow an account, go straight to the recommended, and see what felt relevant to me. And I would have a look through on the page just to see if I felt like I could engage with it. Was it like easy enough for my mind to access it? And because I use the Harapones account the most, that's where I decided to follow these new accounts. You know, there were like infographics pages, news resources, journalists, little like fact slideshow pages, which I obviously don't even know at this point if they're trustworthy. So I'll be taking this as an opportunity as well to practice my media literacy and verifying for misinformation. I think it will encourage me to think about that a bit more. Next, I did a similar thing with YouTube. I subscribed to a bunch of educational and informative channels. I'm trying to get into a habit of just clicking on something when I see it, and if it looks interesting, which is hard for me, as I explained earlier. It's very hard for me to face new information, and I think it must be some kind of fear of disappointment and a fear of like being confused, and the discomfort of exposing myself to something that I'm not going to be able to understand. But it is a bit different for me when it comes to learning through video format, because the way I usually use YouTube is as kind of background videos while I'm doing other things. A lot of the things I watch is very kind of mindless, watchable, easy kind of entertainment, and I usually have it on while I'm doing something else. When I first started thinking about this, I thought, okay, well, I'll subscribe to these channels and I'll just put these videos on. Instead, I'll kind of like replace one comfort video with something useful. But that turned out to be a completely unsuccessful system. It really did just turn into noise in the back of my ear. It was ineffective because I wanted my comfort videos in that situation. That was their purpose, that's what they were there for. So I realized that I really need my full attention committed to videos. So I created something I like to call Discovery Hour. And this is an hour immediately after I've woken up and taken care of myself, where I watch some of these videos for up to an hour in the mornings, and I can really focus on them. And it's very important that it is early in the morning, not like early in the morning, but in the morning. I don't wake up super early, but I notice that I am just so much more receptive to information in the morning. I want to engage with it. I think it's because I like to know that I'm getting it done. I just spend this time in the morning, and then the rest of the day I can just enjoy other videos. I also have this kind of specific system with Discovery Hour where I'll watch the video once all the way through undisturbed, and then I'll watch it again but take notes the second time. Recently I've been making my way through the videos on the Oversimplified channel, which animates events in history in a very oversimplified and easily digestible way, and that's why it's so good for me. So that's Discovery Hour. I've also been trying to read more books. This might not come as a huge surprise to you, but I have not been the biggest reader. I am exactly the person you might have heard describing reading the same paragraph over and over again because it's just not applying. I would just become completely absent from the text in front of me, and reading became this really frustrating and unsatisfying thing to do. But the last year, I've been trying so hard, really actively trying to read more books, and honestly, it's getting a lot easier, and I think I'm getting better at it. Right now I am reading non-fiction because I'm wanting to use it as a tool for learning. And I'm also reading a lot more since I moved to London and I started studying, because I've got like a hour plus commute. So I usually always read a book on the train. I noticed that a book is a very enjoyable supplement for a phone because it still meets this like physiological compulsion to hold something in my hand and look at it, you know? But instead of consuming an infinite feed of memes and brain rot and trolls and women that are more beautiful and have bigger boobs than me, is in place of that guilt-free, civilized, analog media. And paper smells nice. This is also why I have been investing in buying physical copies of books, even though it can be expensive, but I also wanted to use books to get away from my phone. Now I want to show you some of the things I've been reading. And first I want to tell you how and why I bought these books, because I did not know where to start. I've got entire folders saved on TikTok of book recommendations, you know, book reviews, and I was very anxious about choosing the right thing to read because I knew it was going to take me a very long time to read one book. So I felt a lot of pressure to make good choices. And I've been thinking about this, and I think people like me and my generation have maybe forgotten that there are physical stores you can go to where you can browse a limited selection of items. I think because we've enjoyed the inexhaustible resources of the internet, we feel like it's the only place we can go to for suggestions. But what I found in my local Waterstones, which is a big bookstore chain in the UK, is that they have little notes and annotations of some of the things you're seeing, some of the books. And I assume it's written by the staff. Maybe it all comes from like the top and it's not personal at all. I don't know how it works. And in the genre-specific areas of the store, they've selected and separated particular books that they consider to be some of the best in that genre. So I went straight to those featured book tables, and I just looked at what was there and what I felt I wanted to learn about. And I would spend some time looking at the book and reading the blurb and reading a few pages because I wanted to assess if it was going to be accessible for me or if it's maybe a bit too advanced for my reading level. So basically, I tried to make this whole process as easy for me as possible. And I tried to avoid these thoughts of being in there and looking at the books and thinking like, well, maybe you should read some reviews and maybe there's a better book out there, or what if this author is bad and has like a controversial history or something. But I decided I just need to start reading and I can figure things out as I go. First of all, though, I would like to make a cup of tea because I've been talking for something like half an hour, 40 minutes, and I would like a cup of tea. Would you like a cup of tea? You stay there. I'll make you one. Milk? Sugar? Okay. Okay. Continuing. I was actually gone for a lot longer than it takes to make a cup of tea because I called my mum and I'm currently trying to move so was trying to sort out some of that stuff. But now, books that I have bought, books that I've read, books that I'm reading. I'll start with the books that I've finished, all 2 of them, and that's these. So this one was the first one I read because I'm quite interested in human behavior, but I don't think I liked this book. It's all about these like character types, and they've been sort of designated as blue, red, green, and yellow. Yeah, it's just sort of like categorizing people's personality types into these groups, and it was a while ago that I read this. It was a lot more about the workplace than I realized. I think that's it's aimed towards, I think, like managers and people who work with people in kind of corporate environments. And also, it just didn't feel very informative, I think. Like the takeaway I got from it was like red people angry, yellow people happy, green people have no personality, unassertive, unassuming little weasels, and blue people, neurotic, hyper focused, kind of gloomy people. But I mean, it was still kind of a fun read, I guess. Not too difficult to read. Yeah, and it's Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson. But this was like last year that I read this, so I don't think I can give the best thoughts on it. And in general, for all of these books. Okay, this is coming from someone who doesn't read, who hasn't read a lot of books. So this is a very rudimentary assessment of these books. This book, however, I really liked, even though 50% of the time I had absolutely no idea what I was reading, and I realized that there were parts of the book where I just had to accept, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna keep reading because I need to get through it. It didn't matter. I think reading this book is when I realized that the more I read in general, the more things are gonna make sense. It wouldn't work if I just kept reading the same book over and over, because I need more referential knowledge and broad knowledge, because then you'll find yourself reading something and understanding it because of some other understanding you have of something else. Did that make any sense? But I did really like this, and I feel like this actually did change the way I thought about the systems of my brain. In the beginning, it's talking about the 2 systems, how they like process information and influence your behavior and your judgment. But I think the biggest thing I took away from this book was about like biases and how our brain kind of, okay, this is me trying to do exactly what I've said that I struggle with, but I found it quite interesting to learn about how our brains kind of store information and access it. No, this isn't making any sense. This is something about like your brain is always like trying to survive in the most efficient way, and you'll try it will try and recall the most present and easiest information that it can get to, and it kind of wants to be lazy and I know that I understood things from this book, but I'm having a really hard time describing it, and I do want to read this again because I think I'll get even more out of it the second time. But yeah, I remember reading this and at some parts really enjoying it and really flowing with it and being like, oh wow, that makes sense, I understand that, and it was quite rewarding to read sometimes. But there were also large portions of the book that meant nothing to me, absolutely nothing, because he also talks about economics a lot. So need I say more? So yeah, there is like quite a lot of numbers. Oh, and I was using this as a bookmark, a picture of me and my friend Hannah. This is from years ago, I think like just before like lockdown. I had blue hair, it was awesome. And this is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Would recommend this book, however was definitely far too advanced for my reading level at this point. I probably could have done with reading a few easier and smaller books. Like, this is a big book and look how small the text is. But I was just so interested in it, from what it seemed to describe and what it seemed to offer, and I am glad that I read it. So those are 2 books I've read within the last year. Not a very impressive collection. I did read like one non-fiction book that I don't really care to talk about. So what I'm reading now is Noam Chomsky, Who Rules the World. I'm about this way through. This has been easier to read than the other ones. Just in the way he's writing, and you know, obviously there's not as much like statistics and stuff, and I'm learning a lot. There are things in this book that I've never thought about or seen from this perspective, and it's been hard to read. It's been like upsetting to read in a lot of places. I don't want to talk about this one too much because it's kind of political, but yeah, this is what I'm reading at the moment on the tube, and enjoying it. So now I'll show you the books that I'm hoping to read next. I'm gonna start with actually not necessarily educational books, but some poetry, because I got a message from someone on Instagram. I write in my stories a lot, and I'd made some post that was kind of like a wall of text and on like a reel, and they said that the way I wrote reminded them of one or two of these authors, I can't remember, and I had sort of been interested in getting into poetry and reading poetry because I've always really enjoyed writing, not necessarily poems, but I've always journaled, and I really enjoyed journaling, and I really enjoy expressing myself with words. I messaged them, I responded to their message, and we talked a little bit more about poets that they would like to recommend to me. And so there's some Rilke. I haven't read these yet. I had another Rilke book, and I've just realized that I don't know where it is, and it's been some months. This guy, I don't actually know how to say that name. Oh, it was Letters to a Young Poet, the Rilke book, and I thought that Letters to a Young Poet was maybe like metaphorical or something. I didn't realize it was literally a collection of letters that he was sending to like an aspiring poet, and the conversations he was having with that person. But it was still pretty good to read, but I did want to read like poems. And maybe that's the case for some of these books as well. But I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to read something creative as well, but not necessarily like a novel, like stories or anything. So I didn't buy these all in one go. This was actually like a few different bookstore visits. Let's just start with what's at the top of the pile. The Authority Gap by Mary Ann Sieghart. I feel like I need to be a lot more educated and aware of women's struggles and feminist discourse. That's why I bought this. And in a similar way, I want to be more mindful of racial inequality and understand more about what's happening. Because as a white person, I do find it hard to talk about racism. And that's what it says right on the front of this book. So I thought that could be useful. And it's a small book, so I feel like I'll be able to read it pretty quickly. And it's White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Oh, bloody hell. This is The Pink Line, The World's Queer Frontiers. I'm a queer person, I'm bisexual, so I also feel like these are things I need to know about. And I don't. I feel like there's a lot of critical awareness that I'm lacking, and I want to change that. And I feel quite passionately about LGBT rights, and I want to be able to communicate that more and know what I'm talking about, know how to defend what I believe in. But this is a big book. Oh my god, this is the biggest out of all of these. Next book is Let's Talk, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's name.
I'm Nihal Arthanaika, and with me...
Okay, Nihal Arthanaika. Okay, that's not so bad. Nihal Arthanaika, Let's Talk, How to Have Better Conversations. Because I'm quite an introvert, and I definitely have struggled with social interactions. I've gotten a lot better over the years, but it's still something I'm a little insecure about. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to someone and I have no idea what to say, and I don't know if that's necessarily what this book is about. I think it's more about like understanding each other and listening, and yeah, how we can connect with each other and fight loneliness. Yeah, so that's that one. This one is, of course, a question I have asked myself. So I was immediately drawn to the title and the cover. Can't we just print more money? I mean, the sense I got from this title was that it's not going to be too serious and not too heavy, and they must know that they're targeting a certain audience with this, and I'm that audience. Economic in 10 Simple Questions, by Rupal Patel and Jack Meaning. Yeah, it's about economics, and that's something that also feels important to know, that I do not have the faintest understanding of how it works. I literally don't understand. And I've tried. I've like watched some videos, tried to understand things, and I mean, it all just goes completely over my head. Bubbles? What's that? I think I was trying to understand like stocks and how investing works. And I just remember thinking like, but who decides? Well, the market decides. But who's that? But anyway, I think it's pretty obvious why I bought this book. This one I got because of how much I enjoyed this one and how much, as I was reading about the way this book describes biases and biases in our brain and in our like subconscious, I was so interested in those parts of the book. So I had this thought that I should read more about this because I was able to read those parts really easily because I was interested in it, and that makes a big difference. So this is Bias by Jennifer L. Eberhardt, Uncovering the Hidden Prejudices That Shape Our Lives. Because, yeah, I think there's like a lot of things that our brains are doing that is so unconscious, and so easily influenced, and I would like to know more about that. I think this is more about like social biases than what this book was talking about. Like, I think it's more about like race and skin color, and how people are treated based on those things, which is still very important to know about. Now, this one, as I'm like sort of reading it, the blurb and inside, it seems to be that it's targeted not to children but like young people. I think it's supposed to be like a kind of introduction to get young people thinking about science, or maybe not. I don't know where I got that impression from. But I really like the idea of a book like this because I feel like when I was going into the bookstore, I was looking for things that were kind of like a broad introduction to, an easy introduction to the kind of like entire history of something, just for like a general sense of knowledge before trying to understand very specific parts of different subjects. So this is A Little History of Science by William Bynum. I'm sure I've pronounced so many of these names wrong. I think this is going to be an exciting read. Yeah, really looking forward to this. I recently went to see the Bloomberg New Contemporaries at the Camden Arts Centre, which is an art gallery in London, and they had a store in there with books and notebooks and paraphernalia, and I was drawn to this. Like, isn't that cover just so sick? It's called Not What I Meant But Anyway by Revital Cohen and Ter Van Balen. That's that name and that name. And I think they're like a pair of artists, and this is kind of like a photo book of their work, but also text and I guess exposition on the artwork and their process. Obviously I was mostly drawn to the pictures. Some really cool images in here. I really love these like horse ones. Seems to be, you know, some surgeons performing something on a horse. I just want to show you all the nice pictures now. Oh, they look like x-rays? I don't know if they are. Yeah, I'm really glad I picked up this book because there's a lot of aesthetics in here that I'm very excited by, and I wanna achieve this kind of stuff in my art. This looks really cool. I obviously haven't like had a proper look through it yet, but I can already recommend this just for looking at the pictures. So that's all of the books I have acquired, and I'm very much looking forward to reading. Right now, because I have so many books I'm trying to get through, I'm not necessarily looking for suggestions because I don't want to overwhelm myself. But maybe at some point in the future, I'll do something in my Discord. Maybe I'll make like a book suggestion channel or something like that. So those are, I think, 4 things that I'm doing to try to become smarter. And obviously I don't do these things every day. Like Discovery Hour, I try and do it a couple of days a week. But I don't want to stress myself out. I'm not putting pressure on myself to see some incredible results or anything. I just know that this feels good for me. I feel like I'm taking seriously the responsibility of being a human and having an impact on others and the world. That's kind of what I'm trying to do anyway. I want to be a more informed member of society, and I want to be able to understand other people more. A lot of these books are about behavior and psychology and social issues. I realize that's where a lot of my interests are. I just feel like that's kind of almost the foundation of all things, is how we connect with each other. And the reason that I'm making this video and sharing it is because I know that I can't be the only one that feels this way, and I know how insurmountable it feels, and I think I want to show people that you have just as much of a right as anyone to learning and to knowledge. However poorly you may have performed in school, or however you've felt growing up, you have a right, just as anyone, to nurture curiosity. Being so convinced of your own stupidity your whole life, it almost feels pointless to even try. That's what my experience has been. I kind of separated myself from these people that I imagined had working brains and were educated, and I just reminded myself that I'm not like them and I shouldn't even try. But I'm older now and I'm not as mean to myself, and I'm genuinely, for the first time, really excited to be exposed to knowledge, question things and learn things and be open to it, and finally feel like I can begin to receive it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and thank you so much for watching if you got to this point. Okay, bye.